It is believed or stated, according to the Talmud, that chapter 1 and chapter 2 should be both in one single group. And they said that the reason why is David Melech often ends his favorite psalms with the phrase Eshri, Eshri. And in this, he starts Psalm 1 with Eshri and ends Psalm 2 with Eshri. So that's why they felt like that they should be together. Now, according to Mishnaic understanding, that the sages, actually the Marashah suggests that when the sages established the Amidah prayer, that they had 19 blessings or 18 blessings that were included in Amidah. And because of that, they had they patterned in the Amidah after the 18 blessings that are found in the first 18 Psalms. The end of which would be Psalm 18, certainly, actually it'd be Psalm 19 if they're not combined, present into a fitting conclusion for the 18th blessing. And it says, may the words of my mouth and meditation of my heart be pleasing to you. However, when the sages added the 19th blessing, the prayer for protection from slander and enemies, they divided the first Psalm into two so that Psalm 19 would end, may the words of my mouth be pleasing, etc. I think it's sometimes seeing these little sidebars, why something was created and potential as to why there is a reason why every chapter is laid out the way it is in the book of Psalms. Of course, we understand that there are no chapters and verse in any of the Torah, but this is clearly how they felt that the chapter should be laid out when they started doing such a thing. If you'll read, the end says, Psalm 1 says, for God pays attention to the path of the righteous, whereas the path of the wicked shall perish. So this second Psalm ends with sort of a perplexing thing. I'm not going to participate in anything that is evil and wicked. We understand that their ways are temporal and they'll pass. And then verse 1 comes right out of the chute and asks this question: why do nations clamor and people speak empty words? Now, this seems to come after this idea that David Melech was anointed king, and as a young man, anointed king, and he is soon after becoming the king, the Philistines began to protest and protest against him becoming the king. They didn't like the idea. And you'll find it mentioned in some sections of the Psalm as a sidebar almost. And it says this whole idea that because the righteous prosper and the wicked falter, asserting in Psalm 1, the question arises, why do the nations clamor? It says if they're always seeing that their ways are a failure, why do they continue to clamor against Israel? A dear friend of mine I've known for well over 40 years sent me a text today with a news article, and it said reads, the United Nations adopts resolution calling Israel founding a catastrophe. Now, think of all of the things in the world that are problems that the UN could be meeting on. They're going to meet to discuss how Israel's founding was a catastrophe. And of course, everybody in the meeting were anti-Israel and anti-Semites who wanted to come together and make a resolution. Do you realize how many times they've made a resolution? It's almost been twice, 3 times a year for years. And they never make a resolution against anybody else besides Israel. And the question that David Melech asked at this time is so relevant to today. Nothing's changed. You know, we think, oh, we're in such a dark era of our life and so many bad things are happening. And the people are coming against Israel, and you go, no, they've always been doing that. That's nothing new. We shouldn't get shocked by it. And here David opens up and says, why do the nations clamor and people speak empty words? What do they mean by empty words? Words that don't mean anything. It has no effect on cursing Israel, has no effect at all. As a matter of fact, their words are lies. They're empty lies, but they just say them anyway. It says, the kings of the earth raise up and rulers conspire together against God and against his anointed one. I find it interesting that when rulers or individuals decry the Jewish people in Israel, and often we will see them, like many of the celebrities of today, they will say, well, we're not against Jews. We're not anti-Semites. We're just anti-Zionist. Have you guys heard that term? We're not against the Jewish people. We're just against the government of Israel. And there's a Palestinian woman that I know at a market, and we'll talk sometime. And her parents were kicked out of Ramallah. Her grandfather owned a farm, 170 something acres, and it was, taken by the Oslo Accords that took place. And she still is very upset and angry about it. And I get it. I mean, if it had happened to my family and my great grandfather, I get that. But she cannot bring herself to understand that if Israel could succeed, everybody would succeed. I think this is what David Melech is saying. What you don't realize is the nations clamor against us. They conspire against God, not me. Notice how it says it. They aspire against God and his anointed one, and whom God has chosen. Who is the anointed one right now? Israel. Israel is the firstborn son of the master of the universe. And we should understand that as dark and horrible that we see the governments are, and what's happening, and the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, and what's going on with the Arab nations, you're beginning to see, hopefully, a light that is finally coming on in a lot of people who have been anti-Jewish or anti-Israel, to realize we can either join them or continue to clamor, because it's what we're doing is not going to succeed. And this is David Melech pointing this out. He says, verse 2, well, here I want to read this. Let me give you an example. So the Midrash compares those nations that have risen up to threaten Israel to waves of the sea, which stand tall to threaten the shore, but in the end prostrate themselves before it. And like the waves, each nation knows the humble fate of its predecessor, yet they continue to rush forward with irrational confidence. Nimrod rose against Abraham, but Abraham rose against Abraham, but fell before Abraham himself. Abimelech fell before Isaac, Esau before Jacob, the Egyptians before the Israelites, Amalek upon Sihon and Og, Balaam and Balak, and the 31 kings before Moses and Joshua, Sennacherib before Hezekiah, and Haman before Mordecai. Likewise, the future Gog and Magog are destined to fall before Israel. David sees it all. He understands this is the beginning of how it's going to end. So we should have absolute confidence in God, and that's where this thing is leading up to. Verse 3, it says, "Let us remove his cords and cast off his ropes from us." Interesting concept. When you think of ropes and cords, what do you think of immediately? When you think of the Jews, Jewish men, ropes and cords. Can you tell me?
The tefillin and the tzitzit?
Yeah, tefillin, yeah. So here David Melech is saying, okay, I've been anointed king. The nation is rejoicing. Yet all the other nations, the Philistines, are gathered around us protesting, saying they're going to destroy us, they're going to flatten us, there'll be no more Israel, blah, 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 blah. So what do? So we just cast off our tefillin? What should we do? Just cast it off and walk off and not continue to resist? He says, he says, remove his cord and cast off his robes. He says, let us separate the Jewish people from the Torah and the mitzvah, which are the cords that connect to God himself. So the idea is he's being a bit sardonic and what's the other word for it? Asking not a hypothetical, asking, I'll think of it in a second. You guys can help me maybe.
Rhetorical.
Rhetorical. Thank you, Sandy. You win $100. Ding, 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 ding. $100. Timothy, pay her right after class. He's our treasurer for the class. So it's a rhetorical question. I mean, what do? We throw off tefillin. We go try to be secular. I'm going to tell you right now, Israel tried that in many different times throughout history to assimilate into the world they were in. The Greeks most definitely gave the Jewish people the best opportunity to do that. They said, you can worship your God, you can be Jewish, but just don't be uniquely Jewish. Become like a Greek. Don't be circumcised. You know, be a normal Greek and enjoy Grecian life. You can still be a Jew and do that. They realized that obviously wasn't the answer, and it wasn't the answer with the Romans. It wasn't the answer later on with the Christians and et cetera, et cetera. So the answer for sure is not to throw off the yoke, the very thing that attaches you to Torah itself. However, there are people that have done that. I know people who have gone and been to the Holocaust and returned, and they are at best agnostic, if anything, atheist. They're the prime example of somebody who just threw it off. But David Abimelech is warning the lunacy of getting rid of the very anchor, remove the cords, or as in this idea of the sovereignty of God that is over the Jewish people. What do you want to do? Take it off? Say, choose somebody else? There's a famous line in that story about the Jews, I think in Poland, true story, the war, they went and hid into the woods. Do you remember this story? They went and hid in the woods for almost the duration of the war, I think. And they saved a bunch of Jews. And at the end, the young man, Defiance, thank you, Nancy, you win the second $100 in this group. And Timothy is going to pay you promptly. Okay, so just to let you know. I know you're excited. We can't even see her face till we mention money. Here she is. So Defiance, in this movie, Defiance, this young guy that everybody considers sort of a rabbi because he was very educated, he was a school teacher. And at the end, he's like praying, and there's people there, and they're facing sure death. And it's snowing, and he says, you know, all of this, all the things that you've done for us, you remember this? All the things, we are your chosen people. If this is what chosen means, choose another people. Choose another people. Why did you choose us? Right? I want you to understand that being chosen does not mean innate perfection and goodness. Okay, I just want you to understand that God chose Israel because of something very unique within them, but he didn't choose them because they were perfect. He didn't choose them without a free will. At any time, Israel could have shirked off their covenant or tried to. But God is always going to be faithful to his covenant. So even those who have shirked it and left and went to the corners of the earth, these people are still part of the covenant and will be drawn back into the covenant. So they don't have a choice. They got to stick with it. So here goes. Verse 3. Let's see, what verse are we on? We're on 2. Okay, so I'll continue to read on. He who sits in heaven laughs, my master mocks them. Of course, we understand that pretty. Then he will speak to them in his anger and terrify them in his wrath. saying, "It is I who has anointed my king upon Zion, my holy mountain. Then can you dare to defy him? I, David, will recount the statute God said to me." Now, this is interesting. What is this statute that he's talking about? David, in his humility, views his appointment by God as not something that he deserves because of his greatness, but because of God's divine statute. So you see the difference between God chose me because I'm a stately young man, I'm handsome amongst my brothers? No. He said, he didn't choose me because I deserved it. He chose me because that was his statute. That's what transcends reason. Even David and Melech realized, why did you choose me? Of all the brothers, all the people you could have, you chose me. Similarly, we understand God's appointment with the chosen people, as I mentioned before, to be divine statute and not an indication of innate superiority. I know that there are sometimes people mistranslate Jewish teaching to say, you're saying it that way because it makes Jewish people look more special. Like, who do you think you are? You think you're more special than I am as a human being. And in reality, it doesn't mean that God chose them because of them having some divine, divine right, because they're so pure in their essence. It's because God chose them as part of his statute. It was a commitment he made that came from Abraham. So he says, "It is I who has anointed my king upon Zion, my holy mountain, and how can you dare defy him? How can you defy David? David will recount the statute ordained in the Torah by the Jewish people that are God's children." I added that in for better understand. God said to me, "You are my child. I cherish you as if I had this day begotten you." Now there's a little discussion back and forth. The Talmud interprets this verse as instructions to pray to God with awe and reverence. Hold on, I was in the wrong one. What verse did I leave off? Oh, I'm in verse 8 or verse 10? Yeah, verse 7. According to Radak, David is referring to when he was anointed by the prophet Samuel to be king, as the verse states in Samuel 1:16-13. Samuel took the horn of the oil and anointed him amongst his brothers, and the Spirit of God rested upon David from that day forward. According to the Zohar 1198a, David is referring to the day of his bar mitzvah, which is the divine soul entering the body. So this whole idea of David writing that "you are my child, I have begotten you this day," it's a debate. It could be the fact that when he was anointed king. It could be later on during his bar mitzvah when the soul comes in his body. But nevertheless, God has said that he has taken him as his begotten. And also we're reminded that in Deuteronomy 28, God had picked had mentioned this again. It says, joy is the, let me go on and read the next verse. Let's go down to verse 8 says, "Therefore ask of me if I make the nations your inheritance and ends of the earth your possession, smash them with a rod of iron, shatter them like a potter's vessel. Then how be wise kings, be disciplined, or rulers of the earth?" And I'll add some extra text in here that the Tanya says in commentary. Says, "How will now be wise, therefore, O kings, be disciplined, O rulers of the earth, and stop speaking defiantly. Serve God with awe by accepting the yoke of his anointed one." The people of the nations, once they realize how beneficial it's going to be for them to have the temple and to have a successful state of Israel in the Mideast, this is when you're going to see a giant pile on of people who will join Israel. Until Mashiach comes, there will always be defiance. We know that. So verse 11 says, serve God with awe by accepting the yoke of his anointed one. And then you will be able to rejoice while those who continue to devise God's will be trembling. First of all, it is reminding the people that read the text that the answer to this is to serve God with awe by accepting the yoke of his anointed one, that is accepting, in our case, as Noahides, accepting Israel and the Jewish people as being the anointed one of the scripture. So we've done that. And it says, then you will be able to rejoice while those who continue to defy God will be trembling. Service with God should be filled with awe and trembling. Now, it seems to contradict the idea that we see that joy, that we're supposed to serve God with joy. So what is it, awe and trembling or joy? Well, you and I would probably all say with all of those, it's the same. With awe and trembling at the same time with anticipation and joy. It's a combination of both. And we see this pretty clearly expressed. It says, but expressing joy, even when motivated by a mitzvah, can lead to frivolity. The verse therefore cautions us to temper our joy to reverence, to serve God with both awe and joy, to rejoice while trembling. This is sort of the explanation for it. In this case, not only are awe and joy not contradictory, the one leads to the other. Our perception of God's greatness leads us to serve him and to turn to live a meaningful, godly life in the fulfillment of a mitzvah, which is the greatest source of joy. So in reality, how can you serve Hashem without having joy? Because it brings so much joy to do a mitzvah. You and I know that we clamor when we first come out and understand this giant matrix that God makes, and it's called the mitzvahs of Torah. And we all start clamoring to go, what do I do next? Like, what can I do next? How can I do this? What other laws can I follow? You're not doing this out of fear of damnation in hell. You're doing this because you've discovered what awe and trembling does. That's a pure joy to serve him. And that's the reason why that we serve him. We've said this many times when we hear someone tell a Noahide, well, you get no reward for doing the Sheva mitzvot. There's no big reward for that, and especially you don't get any reward for something that you're not told to do. And we say very clearly, we're not doing it for a reward. We're doing it out of awe and joy of serving Hashem. That's why we do what we're doing. It says here, the joyous celebration is its ideal form, is one born of humility and selflessness. It stems from recognizing that everything that we have is a divine gift. Such joy does not lead to frivolity. Rambam thus uses King David, who epitomizes humility, as a model of perfect joy in the performance of a mitzvah. Do you remember his finest example of joy? When he removed his priestly garments, kingly garments, and danced in front of the ark? His wife said he was a fool. He embarrassed her, right? He had so much joy. It says the joy in which one ought to be to rejoice in the performance of a mitzvah and the love of God are a lofty level of worship. I would say this, that true joy and satisfaction in your service to Hashem, your study of Torah, your performance of mitzvahs is the ultimate act of worship. I've had individuals ask me, well, since you guys don't do the church anymore, where do you guys worship? And I said, well, I'm not sure what you mean by worship. I know what they mean by worship. That means come in, raise your hand, sing some music, have some prayer requests, sing some more songs, and you worship JC. Well, in our case, our worship is tied to the study of Torah and mitzvahs. As a matter of fact, it goes further to help us to understand that even though we study the Torah and have this lofty knowledge, if we don't turn it into mitzvah, and if it's not done with joy, then you really have learned nothing. You have no Torah within you. And so what we learn is our Torah, our worship is a daily thing with all of us. And at minimum, it's a 4 times a week deal where you get together and study with somebody. That is our worship. That is our awe of the Maker himself. It says true greatness and honor is found in rejoicing before God. It is written, David danced and abandoned himself before Hashem. Abandoned himself. May we all abandon ourselves in the study of Torah, and we lose ourselves in the study of Torah. 2 Samuel 6:16, Rambam, Hilchot, Lulav 8:15, all talk about this idea of David dancing before the Lord. The verse is also telling us that our trembling, our reverent service of God is an example during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur should not be purely somber, but should be infused with joy. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liate. This is a good one, having to do with verse 11 of chapter 2. It says, one should, hold on, try not to sneeze. It says, one should not raise to pray in any mood other than subdued humility before born of awe of God, as it is written, to serve God, referring to prayer which takes place of the sacrificial service of awe. So we all know that our prayers are done according to the sacrifices in the temple. It says, what a shame to go before Hashem in some kind of a mood, angry, irritable, who knows? Now, God knows that we can all approach him in whatever way that we're in, but we're talking about effectual and fervent prayer is not done in a moody spot. I have children and grandchildren. I can tell you right now, a child that would come up to you moody and demanding things, they're not going to get anything from me. They're going to have to do some introspection. And I think oftentimes we go before the master of the universe and we're stomping our feet. We don't realize that we should change our position on how we look at things. It says, the above teaching also can be understood as a statement of fact. One cannot arise to pray in any mood other than subdued humility, since without this sort of preparation, one's prayer cannot be authentic. One can attain the state of humility through the study of chassidut before praying, which will bring a person to both love and reverence of God. This is found also within the Rambam, etc. I have a book that was just recommended to me, and I wanted to share it with you. It's called Horeb. Have you guys seen this one? It's Rabbi Shimon Raphael Hertz. It's a very good book, and inside of it, it's the philosophy of Jewish laws and observance. And he really hits on what I would call, I guess, the philosophical and spiritual core of the aspects of Torah and the Talmud. And it goes through talking about training through suffering. And this is what I'm saying. It's a great book to get before, say, you do your evening prayers. It says, the uniqueness of Torah, the classification of mitzvot, the basis of obligation toward the laws of the Torah, inquiry of the reasons. He goes through the symbolism of Jewish law, And then within each one of them, he talks about self-sanctification, holiness, fast days, how you should approach them. I mean, it's such incredible sort of personal, having this great tzaddik talk to you through the Torah, how to go through self-appraisal. It's some really good stuff. So just want to share it with you. But once again, putting your mind in a certain place to pray is important. Now, some of you guys might like music, like to hear certain spiritual tunes, Jewish music or whatever. That's also a fantastic thing to do. It says, serve God with awe, accept the yoke of his anointed one, and then you will be able to rejoice, while those who continue to defy God will be trembling. Yearn for purity of heart. Now, this is the secret right here. We all know this. We could not have learned a single strand of Torah without first purifying our hearts before God and desiring authenticity. And also the responsibility of accepting the yoke of Hashem. We couldn't have learned a line. God is not going to reward something that is not sincere about searching. It says, least he became angry, talking about the individual least become angry. Yearn for purity, least you become angry, and you will lose your way with his anger flares for even a moment. Praise are all who put their trust in him. This last part of the text ends with a warning. And that is, he points out, yearn for purity of heart and wholeheartedly accept the yoke of God's anointed one, the people of Israel, lest he become angry and you will lose your way, and his anger flares for even a moment. He says, praise are all who put their trust in him. The idea is this: we don't want to do anything to invoke the frustration of God in our life, nor do we want to invoke anger in our own life. Anger blocks our Torah. If you know of someone who has a trouble holding on to their anger and their outburst, this can very much affect whether Torah is seated or not properly with an individual. Now, that concludes Psalm 2, and we'll continue to Psalm 3 next time.